Thank you, Adam and Andrew, for joining us again. Adam's our VP of Product. Andrew is our PM that manages both Lifecycle Manager and Lifecycle Insights products. And so we thought we'd bring them back to have a product level conversation. So think of all the questions, comments, roadmap, feature requests, anything like that that you want to chat about. Drop it in the chat or just jump in. It's just kind of an open conversation here. And what I'll do is I'll give the sharing over to Adam because I know he had a few slides
Awesome, thank you.
to go through. And so the next few slides are going to give you the chance to think about the things you want to ask, because this is really for you guys to engage with Adam and Andrew here, obviously. So take it away, Adam.
Perfect, thanks. Yeah, my name is Adam Hert. I'm the VP of Product here, still fairly new, joined partway through July. So we've been here 5 weeks or so. I don't have a ton of slides, but I want to give you kind of enough information to understand like our perspective, like how we do product, how we decide what to build, and kind of the lens we use to filter that. And then we'll just open it up for open discussion. So the first thing, we have a product mission, right? So mission statements for a product organization, it's basically why your products exist, right? Like, why do ScalePad products exist? Why do we continue to work on these things and build these? And our mission statement is to enable MSPs to scale by reducing the effort required to sell and provide each service to a client, right? We're trying to make your jobs and your lives easier, right? If you're trying to sell to a client, we want to make that easier. If you're trying to provide a service to a client, we want to make that easier, right? Just reduce the load on you so it's easier. And if you've just got, a lifestyle business and you're not looking to get any bigger, that's okay. We're still here to make it easier so you have more time to go golfing if that's what you want to do. Or if you're looking to take that next step, we're trying to make it easier for you to run the business so you can then get that next client, hopefully with the same level of staff. And we created this. This is basically the scaling life cycle. So this is how we see MSPs can scale. And albeit it's not perfect. It's a PowerPoint, so you can't put everything in there. Otherwise, it'd get a little bit busy and confusing. But the scaling life cycle is something that we see as how MSPs can grow, can get larger, and bring on more business. So basically, there's a sell side and a deliver side of scaling an MSP. To get a new client or get new business, you have to pitch a new service. You have to quote that service, eventually close it, onboard the client, or at least onboard that new service or project for the client, deliver the service, support it. Ideally, you reach project success, right? Like, you're delivering what you said you were going to do. You've made some improvement for the client. You want to show value to that client, retain them, then identify the next service or project for that client, or the next service or project for a client that you don't have yet. Plan it out, and then go through the process again. So we kind of use this as a lens on the product team that we want to make this whole thing easier, right? Not just the individual areas, but we want to make the whole process of, selling to a client, identifying the service, providing that service, doing the QBRs and that whole thing. We want to make all of that easier, not necessarily discrete steps, but just make the whole process easier. And this is part of our strategy. So we don't just want to, we're not just sitting in a back room thinking, how can we make more money and sell more products to more partners? It's not really what we're trying to do. We've got a long-term vision, and we want to help partners grow. And in turn, we just grow with them, right? So if we can help partners deliver more services to more clients with a better experience for those clients, great. Those partners can grow, and we can just grow with them, right? So we're not trying to find something where we could just force products. We're trying to help our MSPs grow, and the output of that is we grow with them. But I'll just pause there for a second. And I'll pull up the chat as well. Any questions so far? Feel free to put it into the chat in the side. I now have that open so I can see any questions you put in there. Feel free to put comments in too. So
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are we going to talk about like ScalePad or Lifecycle Insights?
Good question. So this is, I've only got one more slide, and this is just kind of ScalePad generally. And then we'll open it up for discussion for Lifecycle Insights.
Okay, thanks.
We can bring up questions for either one. But this is the general process we have on the product side of things. the most important thing we do is speak to partners like yourselves. Believe it or not, this is one of the hardest things. Like if it was, we're always kind of short of people to spend lots of time with. Like if it was up to us, we'd be spending 3/4 of our day just talking with partners. So at any point, if any one of you wants a one-on-one with the product team, we will happily set that up, right? We will change our calendars around. We will make time for you and we will speak with you one-on-one. And what we're trying to do is understand basically like the day in the life of partners like yourselves. We understand how you start your day, which products you're using, which tools you're using, where your challenges, where are the things that can be improved. So how can we build things in product to make your lives easier? The next thing we do internally, we have a framework called Jobs to be Done is what we're using. It's a framework that exists in the product management world. And basically what it is we document the job or the thing that you are trying to do that is difficult. It might be quoting clients, it might be running QBRs, whatever it is, the job that you're trying to do that's difficult, we document those. And that we basically document how it's being done today, what the challenges are, and how we would like to see it. Like what's the easy method for that job? And that helps us kind of identify the core challenge and finds the value in there as well. The next stage of this is we take all these jobs to be done from all these partner conversations and we prioritize them, right? Is this, how many times have we seen this challenge? Is everybody that's using LCI saying that they have this challenge? How impactful is it if we solve this? Does it line to our internal strategy? How much effort is it to solve this? So that's kind of the prioritization side. So anytime you're submitting a feature request or in a call like this, if you bring up a challenge that you have, it's feeding into that prioritization if we've already heard about it, or it's feeding into our jobs to be done if we haven't heard of it yet. So just keep that in mind that it's never just kind of going into the void. Anytime you bring up a challenge, we're documenting it and we're helping prioritize what we build. And then the last step on here is building. So once we actually decide to build something, we often try to break it down into milestones. So if there's a big project, we know that's going to take us 6 months. We don't necessarily want to wait the full 6 months before we solve your feature request or give you something in the product. We want to break that down into milestones and hopefully provide incremental value along the way. So I'll pause there. And this is my last slide. So this is just giving you a view into basically how we run product here. And then for the rest of this call, we'll open it up into discussion. So you can bring in feature requests, things that you'd like to see changed, areas of your business that you find are challenging, that you'd like even within LCI, or if you'd like to expand it outside of LCI, we can do that as well. So I'll pause there. Any questions or comments, any challenges people want to bring up that you'd like to see prioritized?
Oh, totally. I have, sorry.
Perfect. That's what we're here for.
I didn't even look if anybody else had wanted to say, but I already wrote like 4.
Sure.
So one of the things I would like to, so ability to mark customers based on their MSA they're on. Let's say we have two like a type of MSA. So right now is essential and one is like comprehensive, for example, right? And it's a little bit different nature of how much VCIO work we're providing. Is there's a possibility maybe you can have like an out of the box a workaround, like what would be, is there's a way to like kind of mark it somehow?
So just to differentiate between the different amount or kinds of duties that you perform for each type of MSA?
Yes.
So Mark or Casey or Shay, is this the kind of thing that is typically framed inside of an assessment? Like the QBR visit is based on an assessment template?
No, oh, sorry. It's more like for VCIO. The reason I'm saying is because let's say there's a VCIO, they're doing like more so like probably all familiar with like Captain Obvious part, right? Where like, VCIO roles like more like address like obvious things, but they're not spending time developing like strategy on 5 years and things like that, right? So they both have the same like budget, also have budget preparations, but it's a different how much effort you put into that developing that budget. Are you taking everything that is like frankly obvious, or you really need to spend more time on that?
Just taking notes in there. But Mark, were you going to say something?
No, I mean, so those things, at least for I mean, there's the customer success module for that. The whole budget point of the MSAs is in contracts, really not in assessments. But
I didn't say anything about assessments. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
so
yeah.
So the whole contracts piece, like the whole MSA and you adding whatever contract you want, it's really to build them a total technology budget so that they can understand where they're spending their money, that's included to your sales and whatnot. So including the MSAs is important in there. Like if you have
okay, no, that's not what I'm asking. That's all. That I'm just asking about if in the VCIO level, if there is any sort of way. I have a dashboard, but there's no way for me in the dashboard to add a note here. So like, oh, this, like just a note saying that specific, right? So like, oh, this customer does like just something. Yeah, I can use this note, right? It could be a field, but it could be a note. There's no way for me to add note that is not in a particular like review or anything like that, like a generic kind of note about the customer.
Okay, so that's actually one thing that we're working on. And if you've submitted a feature request for that, we'll go ahead and add a +1 for it. But the notes in the dashboard and or in the headlines is actually one of the features that people have been asking for. So.
Okay, all right, yeah. So should I submit another one? So you can just add it right now to the plus.
I think we can just add it right now. We can take care of that. And I think to take that further, so this is notes you can put in a dashboard. Did you like notes specific to like a client? So you can just kind of like you're running notes for everything for a client. Like, would you want improvements there?
Well, there's a second question for sure. Like which right now we're resolving. So there's a one statement. Let's say I want a one statement for the client, right? Like VCIO light, let's call it like that. Like this is a VCIO light, for example, customer, or this is VCIO comprehensive. And that determines how much time VCIO spends on the budget preparations, right? Whether it's like line of automation versus actually doing research and things like that. So it's not, but that could be one thing, one step. At the same time, I would love to see a notes section that will allow to create information about the client that not necessarily stored under individual business reviews, right? So you maybe just want to add a note, right? We do have IT glue, but since VCIOs live in Lifecycles inside, it's nice for them to see those notes like right away, right? In the same place. Is there anything like that coming up?
We've been discussing that one. Yeah, so that's we don't have a time frame for it. It's not a commitment yet, but it's been kind of one of the top requests. Lots of people have asked for it. And the way I'm kind of thinking about this, like it's almost like you could think about it like a CRM, right? Like there's Salesforce, does this for generically as a CRM where hey, you've got your customers and you can add notes about them. They even have a feature where they can like hook up to your email, so you can see all of your emails with a specific client and see all the notes and that sort of thing. Would you want to just see like generally more of that? Like, would you want to see email integrations, and more integrations with like PSA tickets? So just like the full comprehensive, hey, here's all your communication with this client.
Like ability to communicate, ability to have that integration with PSA that it will include to see like notes. And because right now you can see some notes, but not if customer replies to a ticket with additional information, right? Especially like if right now there's existing recommendation. If customer says, yeah, you know what, let's work on this, then VCIO would create a ticket, and so they can track their time they spent on like submitting a solution, like a solution design request to design desk, for example, or collecting any sort of other data. So the recommendation exists like in LCI, but in LCI recommendation, there's not much room, or it's not super convenient to keep track of how the work on that recommendation progresses, because sometimes there's research needs to be done. But that's all, and communication with the clients, right? And that's all kept in the ticket, right? So there's like two places. If there was a possibility to not just link the recommendation with the ticket, but also see like like notes from the tickets in LCI, that would be really great, like really good for VCIOs for their efficiency more so.
Okay. And do you think it would only be used by VCIOs, or I'm not sure the size of your MSP, like would like account managers and different people look at that information and utilize it?
So that's a good question, because like everybody in the team has access to VCIO board, right? In ERP, so they do know all of that. They don't necessarily all need to have access to LCI, because the fewer platform they use, the better. And VCIO will release like comprehensive information. They don't need to nitty gritty. They can see the follow-ups and all of the and like exchange of information in the tickets themselves, right? So I don't expect other people than VCIOs to or TAMs, log into LCI directly.
Okay. I saw a comment, and actually, Alexander, you have your hand up, so feel free to go ahead.
Yeah, so one of the things that I think I just discussed this, excuse me, with Mark, but in the scheduler function, we like to utilize it in a manner where the client success managers have their technology business reviews with their clients. And at the end of the quarter, we want to be able to pull some sort of metric or some sort of KPI or some sort of data, whether it shows in a form of a graph or a chart or whatever way it can show. And the other function is that I think that because you cannot turn the auto scheduling off and you set some schedules, it causes conflict in the data when you want to see how many technology business reviews or quarterly business reviews did Joe and Janice and Jack complete.
Okay, so basically the ask here is to, I guess you want the auto scheduler to be not conflict with this. Like you just want to be able to see how many they're completing.
Yes, because I think the not having the ability to turn off the auto scheduling for a client, I think that's the ability, that's what's causing the interference from the accurate data. Or even if I wanted to pull a spreadsheet or data or some sort of graph and then give that as a report, I think that's something that would be beneficial just to see what everyone is doing.
Okay. Mark, do you know if that's possible today? Like, is that a real conflict that we need to fix?
It is. The scheduler piece, the auto scheduling actually even schedules on the weekends, and we can't stop that. So I know I've put it in as a feature request, and I don't think my devs like me enough. So they're your words carry more weight than mine.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and also I would want to add to that. I talked about that earlier with like somebody at the LCI, that the best way to schedule is to ability to schedule per, let's say, first Tuesday of the month or second Tuesday of the month. And because in this case you 100% know which days are open, I actually have built a spreadsheet on my end that allows me to do it really easily. So I don't even rely on a scheduler because it's too complicated and it's like hard. So we kind of duplicate it, but at least when I do it in an Excel spreadsheet, the way I build it, I right away can tell which day of the month is available, so you can create that cadency. If that could be done automatically, it would be like so convenient.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I mean, these are perfect. I mean, these are challenges you guys have in the day-to-day that, I mean, it's just kind of too much clicking around to solve these problems. So that's what we're here for.
Adding on to that, I have an issue. I also have everything set up as the first Tuesday or the third Thursday, that kind of thing. But then the actual calendar invite with my client is in my calendar. And if we ever have to move it for any reason, it is very complex to go make my calendar and the LCI side match. It'd be nice if there was some connection between the calendar in LCI and my calendar in Outlook.
That is correct. I second that because we faced that as well.
If I'm really reaching, I would love to be able to send the invite out of LCI so that I don't have to do it in two places.
Okay.
Agreed.
Talked about that for a while.
And I think we know a lot of this is talking about kind of centralizing stuff in one place, right? Not having to use multiple tools for something, right? So if you can, have all the information from your, vCIO information, have all the notes and kind of communication with the client all in one place, be able to book your meeting, schedule your meeting from there, just less context switching between tools. I think that's the kind of the theme we're on here, which makes a lot of sense. But let's keep it going. Anything else? What other challenges we have?
I have. So we need ability to have same assessments done for multiple locations for the same client and make sure they don't look like they are, same, like different score for the same. We're using notes, but they don't actually give you anything like, differentiate. The system would think that this is the same assessment for the same company for the same things. You know what I mean? Sorry, I'm bubbling a little bit.
Oh no, Andrew, do you capture that one?
Yeah, I think so. Same client has multiple locations, need to do the same assessment, like same assessment. Is evaluation for the different locations across the one client.
Yes.
And right now they all just look the same. They look identical.
Yes, yeah, right. So there's like baseline, there's comparison, but unless you specify in comments, like they say, oh, this is for that website, this is for that site, but when you run any sort of report, they're just all mixed up, right? And the report will show up like the latest report, right? It will not differentiate it by the comments that say, oh, that's for a different site.
Right. So you're getting like baseline or like comparisons, which are not real comparisons across time, but rather comparisons across locations, which is not.
Yeah, they technically aren't even comparison. They're all like a baseline, right? They just have no comment. Oh, okay, that's a different location, but you cannot truly run a proper reports to have side by side. Well, technically you maybe not. No, you can't. Like if you have 3 locations, right? And let's say they did an assessment for power management, right? So it's 100% like separately, right? Each question has to be answered for each location separately. And you cannot put them side by side necessarily and say, okay, and clearly see, okay, this is, one location, the other location, because if you look through overall reports, it will show you that, oh, the latest location you did, this is your latest score, kind of, right? Because it doesn't give you an ability to filter in any capacity or see, it's kind of becomes more manual.
Right.
Alina, from a presentation layer perspective, I'm curious, also curious what other folks think. In that scenario of a multi-location client, do you prefer to see each location separately reported on, or do you prefer to see the item across various locations?
I have a client who's doing multiple acquisitions. They've done 4 in the last 2 months. So it would be more helpful for me to have an assessment per location for the client who just acquired another business. If I were to lump it all into one, they're going to ask, I'm going to get pickled with how many questions. Is this for this location or is it for that location? So I do have to agree with her that.
Also, yeah, I want to add is because let's say even if there's different locations, let's say the question is about whether they're UPS is out of warranty, right? And like one of the UPSs and one of the locations. So one it could be having like 100% perfect, but also in terms of budgeting, right? So business might not just immediately say like, yeah, we're gonna just go ahead and do it all at the same time. Even practically, you cannot deploy everything at the same time. So you want to say, hey, we're doing first location, then the second location, and the third location. And it comes to even if you're implementing like even a single server, but you have to fix a single to like cover all of them. You still have you have to create a budget. Sometimes projects are done per location and have to be staged, and if you cannot differentiate it in like it makes it a little harder.
Makes sense. And I'll just to justify why I asked the question is because, you know, from the perspective of standardization, let's say you're not charging the client to do on some amount of standardization work or some change in process or workflow that is internal to the MSP, but you'd like to be able to track it in terms of like what task of this particular amount of assessment work has been completed on a per client basis. And, you know, if it's an assessment, it's a different type of reporting anyways, which does allow you to see it that way. But so that was my curiosity, but I think your guys' answers make sense. Thank you.
Lewis, I have customers. I want both. There are times I don't care at all, and then there are times where my client needs to see things very particularly broken out per location.
Right.
I agree with Greg. I've experienced both as well.
Are you guys thinking about going to a one-to-one per asset kind of thing like my IT process did? Where if the client has one firewall at every location, then great, I just score it by location and that's fine. But if they have two firewalls or two UPSs or two of one asset at a single location, now it gets much more one layer deeper into that matrix of complexity.
Andrew, are you able to answer that one or kind of provide some insight?
I'm not exactly sure what you mean, Greg.
We were on my IT process before we flipped over to LCI, and they had just implemented a change to try to make it so that every asset in IT Glue could be directly linked to the question. So the template question is, does your firewall have a safe password?
Right.
And instead of having to answer that as yes, if all firewalls have safe passwords, or no, if any one firewall doesn't, and then rely on my tech to remember to put in the notes which firewall didn't, and they often miss that step, then now it made a bunch of work up front. I now have to go at the onboarding stage of a client, map the IT Glue asset to every question to create all the versions of that question if there's 7 firewalls. It was a lot more work up front, but then once you're producing the assessments on a monthly basis, it was a lot less work for the tech to remember to think about and explain the nuances of those different answers.
Right. Makes sense.
And so I guess
I'm not implying I think that's the right answer.
I was gonna say, yeah,
it was a lot of work.
So the ideal scenario for you, I guess, what would the ideal scenario look like? Where would you want to input that information?
There's pros and cons on a lot of the different sites that I've seen. My experience is I'd rather make that work up front to map to individual assets than chase my techs for forgetting to put in notes for the 400th time.
Okay, yeah, like do it once and kind of at the client and then location level, be like, they have multiple firewalls here. So whenever we're doing anything with that, I need to know that there's multiple firewalls.
And it was really nice as the VCAO side going in and checking what did my tech go score this month to know this. I know that you scored this server and didn't score that server, or I know which servers exactly to the asset in IT Glue, which ones you scored. That was also really nice.
Okay, that makes sense.
I haven't heard of that and before, but like this kind of prompt me to think that even if there was an ability in the assessment, when you do and you identify an asset that is problematic, you should be able to tag that asset instead of typing in like, oh, this is problem, you just tag that, and it will also show it can show in the asset list as well, like a show up in the assessment, meaning like flagged during the assessment, right? So when you look in LCI, if you look on you can see recommendations. I think if you click through But if you can see, like, it just showed up in the assessment, you know what I mean?
So the tag would be displayed on the asset list.
Yeah, it can be. I mean, because it's a tag, right? I imagine it may be, connected, right? It's an additional benefit to it, right? You can see, as well as ability to tag recommendation. Give you a scenario. Let's say a TAM is working on something, right? And he like say identify there's a problematic device, right? And he knows that at this point in time, I need to tell VCIO that I recommend to replacing, but he can look it up and he says, like, oh no, like there is an existing recommendation already, something, let's say there's a whole new plan to replace something, right? And oh, this can be addressed, a part of it, right? So I want to tag the same recommendation to it. It can be achieved during that project and during that project, but there's no ability to add recommendation or to existing recommendation during the assessment.
Cool. I like that. Yeah. So then it's like assessment recommendations already there, but somebody's going along and said, hey, this thing's dying. It needs to be part of this existing recommendation. Just click a button and add it to it. And then when the person's having the conversation, they've got that additional context now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joe, it was good chatting you by email this morning. Your hand is up. We'll let you have the floor.
Okay, this is going back to Olena's question regarding multiple sites. So what I have done as a workaround or even a solution for that is to take the base template, and when I have a question that I need to answer across multiple sites, let's just say the battery backup information. So I'll keep the original question in there, and that's going to be for the main office, and then clone that question and add it again. And in the clone, I'll change that. I'll put a little header at the front of it that says office number 2. And I can clone that as many times as I need to for as many locations as they have. And then I create tags for each of those offices, and I'll tag the appropriate question. So my TAM, when he goes on site, he can filter by site using the tags. So he can just go through the assessment and answer it at the site that wherever he is. And so that way, when we get that assessment back, it's got everything all separated out by site. Now, might not be like the ideal scenario, but it after I created it and we've used it a couple of times, we're fairly new to this particular product, but it seems to have worked pretty well for us.
Well, thank you. That's a great workaround for sure. It makes sense.
There's a comment in here in the chat that linking the contacts and assets and locations from the PSA and leaving the PSA as a single source of truth. I think that makes sense. Like we don't we realize there's an ecosystem of tools, and the PSAs are very important. We don't necessarily want you to have to go in and recreate information that you already have somewhere else. So if there's feature requests like that, like just pulling it in makes sense. And maybe one question. We've been talking about we want to do these use location as like this important dimension. Is that enough? Like, are you ever using a site or location plus like a floor or like a business unit? Like, is location enough, or do you need more dimensions on there?
I think you just broke some brains there.
You did. I was just going to say, are you saying like I could tag things as MDF, IDF for location?
Well, would you want that?
I don't know. It's just the first time I ever thought about it. So then I could score the whole, I've got 2 servers in a SAN and 2 iSCSI switches and a UPS all together in one group. I would categorize that as the location, but also MDF.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Can I chime in with something?
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of great comments. Thank you for everyone for your input. Definitely got me brainstorming as I was finishing my lunch there. I think when we look at things from a high level, the inherent issue that I personally have, and I've heard a lot of other people have, is we don't really have a single source of truth for the identify pillar for NIST. I'm having to, we have users, we have locations, we have assets, we have applications. These are all things that we need to deal with lifecycle management on for our clients, right? And so that's where Lifecycle Insights plays a great role to help kind of bring all that info together in one place so you can report on it and make actions. But as we talk about this locations idea, I mean, when most RMMs aren't even really designed to deal with location in the first place. The PSA is. I use Data RMM. There is no like location, other than external IP, I guess, or if you physically divide them out. But there's no way for me to map locations from Data RMM to PSA. So naturally, what you find is when you want to start mapping things to locations, I'm finding it's best to do that in the PSA first. Right. And then try to automate it if possible. Right. You don't want to have to do it manually all the time. And then that becomes your source of truth, where really the minute you talk about a network, the client's network, they could have 10 different networks if they have 10 different locations. And then you're going to be approaching those not all at the same time. I'm not going to go to a client and say, hey, replace all the network equipment in all 10 locations. We're going to be kind of addressing meetings with the clients, and projects location by location. And that's where I really feel like that segment of information is very helpful in Lifecycle, is when you start getting with clients that have multiple locations and you want to segment out your planning and reporting and filtering out by location, maybe, right? And then where do you pull that info? And then how does it know what's married to that location? So definitely something that's going to help us out. I do know that Data RMM, for those of you are using it, they are coming out with a better integration where they're going to treat sites as locations. So you could have a single company in the PSA map to multiple Data RMM sites where each site is a location, right? That's a step in the right direction.
Okay.
So that's all I have. That's it for now.
I think it makes sense. Like it's good. It's good insight. All the when we're talking about sites and locations and different ways to group things, I'll tell you a quick story. I used to work for a different company, and we had it was Shell was one of our big customers, and they had all their different sites and locations, but they also grouped them into basically whether it was like a retail area or an office or like an industrial area. And they used carpeted or non-carpeted. So non-carpeted was like an industrial area, and carpeted was more of a retail or an office. And they actually had a VP of networks for carpeted areas was that person's actual role. But some companies do this. They have even smaller companies. They might have some locations that have like a different dimension to them, and maybe we'll have a project that only goes after one kind of area of the business.
I don't know if this is just my own noisy problem with my tools, but we have a lot of different almost duplicate looking locations that get pulled into LCI. It would be great if I had a little mapping table to say, no matter where the source of the location is, map it, call it this, just to normalize them so it stays the same across, because we have different answers in our PSA from our RMM, and I think that's a me problem, but it would get real easy to solve if I had that lookup in LCI just to map them. And
well,
what we call it for tech is different than what the client calls it. It'd be nice to use their phrasing so I can translate it.
It sounds almost like the need is to be able to declare who the source of truth for the particular asset type, if it's a location, is, because IT Glue gets fairly deep on locations as well, but it's kind of beholden to PSA if you have it connected. So I guess it really depends. But if RMM has location, you don't want the conflict or the duplication or any of the other noise.
I mean, the location, I think, is important too, as we get more into compliance and needing to be able to provide a good incident report about what happened, what, where, how, and when, right? I mean, if you can correlate a group of IPs and say, oh, all of this traffic happened at this location, and then all of a sudden it spread to this location, right? Because you're dealing with physical addresses at that point.
Yeah.
All right, so we kind of talked about, centralizing information, less context switching, location really important, kind of everything we're doing here. It sounds like location is kind of enough. Like it sounds like we don't need other dimensions on top of that because location is kind of the main one. Other challenges we have?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, you're going to Des for the weekend, so.
I'm not sure if Katya's trying to chat with us or somebody else, but
I think it might be somebody else.
I have a thought around the tags as far as running a tag report from when we've done like the assessment templates, and we've marked different things like internal to kind of help score. Like sometimes the customer doesn't necessarily need to have the score affected if it's something internally that we're like making a ticket, like pushing patches for firmware updates. But what would be nice would be able to run a report through all the templates, sorting by tags.
Run a report on all templates.
Or the templates for the standards, yeah. So to be able to like go through the templates and to be like, what's internal versus having to go through everything manually.
Okay. Mark, is there any workaround for that one? Is Mark still on here?
Yeah, I'm still here. I don't know of a workaround for that at the moment. Jeff, do you Jeff Dunkel, if you know of a workaround.
One workaround I've done is if I can go through, I think a company, if we've done it, and I can sort it by like, so we have quarterly standards, right, that we're checking. So we have like 4 different templates, 4 or 5 actually, because we have an on-site. I can run an individual report, but not everything. Like, so like I can go through like quarter 1, tag internal, see what that is. It's just, I don't know, it'd just be handy to be able to pull it all in one location.
Okay, fair enough. We'll make sure if there's not already a feature request for that, we'll open it up. And then
can somebody summarize that one for me so I can just put in the notes? Elizabeth's request.
Being able to utilize a report on tags combining multiple templates.
The multiple templates one is interesting because that didn't come to mind initially, but this has come up before where when you're in a single assessment, right now you can only filter by, show all items, show unanswered, or show answered, right? Ultimately, even if you're in a single assessment, give me a filter by tag, right? Like I only want you to show me questions that have this tag right now that I'm going to go fill out.
Right. And to see it in the template, because that way too, you can either filter it to see what you have, or, when you're adjusting the score, like make it a 0, whether, because sometimes it's not fair. Like if our documentation is wrong, that they're getting a crappy score. Right. So we want to have their score be more driven on strategy and moving them forward with standards.
Well, and then also if you've got a bunch of questions the client needs to fill out, you can filter by client tagged questions and then easily just walk through those with them, right?
Oh my gosh, that's a good, I didn't even think about customer tags like for them. We've been manually just been like, question for you. It's been manual, but oh my gosh, if you could manually do that and tag it.
Brian, were you talking about when you're going to do the assessment, being able to filter down to the tags? You're muted, Brian. Oh, I guess we lost him.
Yeah, that's actually the one. The reporting has filter by tags, but we don't have it for the actual assessment event. So the feature request is add tagging and filters to the assessment event page. We really do need that.
If you don't mind, I can share my screen real quick and show you like a visual.
Sure.
Don't mind the client name. You never saw that. This is a brand new assessment anyway. But when you go
YouTube doesn't care.
Yeah. When you go into an assessment, the only filters you have right now are these, right? And we use a fair amount of tags.
You can do it. The top right next to form, there's a tag for the global site. It's not been there that long. Go two to the left, the little tag with a magnifying glass.
Aha. So they did finally add this.
It's not been around that long.
Okay. So this is what we requested a while ago, and it looks like they did offer it. So that's nice. So this is here now, but it's only for a single assessment at a time.
Yeah.
It sounds like the original question was more, across multiple assessments, right?
Right. Yeah.
Or assessment events. Yeah.
Assessment events. Yeah. But
so Louis, add that one to your notes and check it off already done. You guys are making progress.
But in all honesty, I mean, what we just realized is a poor GUI development, right? I'm expecting filters to be in one place without even realizing I can go click this other thing for a whole different filter. So maybe the talk there is, don't make your filters all over the place. Make them kind of in one area so you don't know what you're missing out on.
That's completely fair.
There was a reason they moved it to that global.
I think the context is important. Like what is your filtering on? It's really tough when they're all at the same layer visually from a UX perspective, but they're applying to different aspects of the context or the individual data that is beneath. So I would imagine there's some review of that possible. The Brian alert system.
Yep.
In that same view, though, where you do have the ability to say, show me answered or unanswered, it'd be nice on that same part to be able to see, just show me everything that was already answered red. You can do that when you flip over to like the report view on there, but you can't do it while you're still scoring and just show me everything that was red or green.
I see.
Makes sense. We've got a little bit of time left. Brian, you asked about the API. You've got, I think, 5 exclamation marks, so we can't ignore that. Question on that one. We're actually doing research on an API right now. What would you want to pull out and where would it go? Would it be for going into like a dashboarding tool? Would it be going into some custom code? Would you be pushing data in?
So there's things that we have to manually do right now when changes happen with a client that either take too long to eventually sync to Lifecycle. So now we've got disparate data until we wait for another sync. Or sometimes I'll sync it and it won't update for some reason. And I'm like, why isn't this updating? Mainly with Microsoft is what I have the most issues with. A good example is if a user's offboarded and they're unlicensed in Microsoft, but turned into a shared account. And then even if we manually inactivate them in PSA, they still show up as a user on the user list. And we have to go in and manually hide that user since they've been offboarded. It does eventually get rid of the fact they had a Microsoft license, but it still shows a green check that they're on Microsoft as a shared account. And then it shows a red check next to the PSA, but it still shows them on the list. So we use Lifecycle Insights to report monthly on the users and devices that we're billing our clients for. And we have automatic device reports. Right now, we manually make the user ones because they don't have scheduled user reports yet. But so before we go in and let these reports run either manually or automatically, we're basically spending time making sure there's still not assets we don't really have an issue with, more users, still not users showing up on the list that have been offboarded. And so there's little things like that until Lifecycle Insights fixes those and makes them more of an automated process, I want to be able to use the API to automate those ourselves because we're using Roost. So if there's something during an offboarding that I know that Lifecycle doesn't happen automatically right away, I can instruct Roost to make that happen for me so that I know I'm not having to wait for a sync or inadequacy of an automated feature that creates a manual workflow for us.
Got it. Okay. So this is actually like changing the data, like manipulating the data in Lifecycle Insights. Makes sense. Would you want to pull data out for anything?
If you didn't have a report that I needed in a format that I wanted it in, then that would definitely be another use case, right? I would pull it out via API instead. There's also things like We use Cloud Radial as our client portal, and there might be things that I want to true up between what Lifecycle shows and Cloud Radial shows in certain instances, because those are two different disparate systems that are both have sync processes that happen on a certain interval and rely on the PSA as a source of truth. So it's like the client's not looking at the PSA. They're either looking at reports from Lifecycle or they're looking at the Cloud Radial portal. And how do we keep all that data up to date on a more real-time basis, right?
Okay, yeah.
By the way, also client also looks at the BrightGauge dashboards for like ticket analytics and things like that. So if there would be a way to, if they're looking through Lifecycle to be like, I don't know, a source of truth or something, if they are looking into reports from Lifecycle, it should be either a link or some sort of to post links. Okay, here you click, and even if they be redirected to BrightGauge directly, it's fine.
I was curious if BrightGauge was going to come up.
Yeah, that's a good point. We were in the beginning looking at using Lifecycle for certain sources of truth until we realized some sync issues or delays maybe that it had. And so now we've moved to a different process. But but I could see in the future, if Lifecycle is pulling in data in a way that we prefer over where it's pulling from, we might use it as a single source of truth instead.
I have one more question than like just Lifecycle, no other platforms need it. So when we do assessment analytics by all customers, it'll be nice to have an ability to actually see the date when they're completed, so you can so some sort of reporting based on dates, because right now you can see, but you can see when it was completed or not, and most importantly, unless you manually kind of check each client and reconcile with some sort of a list, you won't be able to see which client is missing that assessment. Let's say like TAMS does, like, okay, you have to, over the next month, you have to do this assessment for all clients. If I'm a manager, I'll come in like 2 weeks and I'm like, okay, which ones are done and which ones aren't? And I have to manually click, right? It doesn't tell me whether it's complete. So on per customer location, per like customer, all customers are reporting, I can tell which ones are missing unless I reconcile it, and like which ones were done the latest, for example, or which assessment were done over the last week, for example.
Okay, that one makes a lot of sense. So just like over everything, which ones are either really old or haven't been done, right? So which ones basically need action, need to be chased up, right?
Yeah. Otherwise, I'm like, okay, I have to go each client anyway and click on that and see, oh, that was done, or I have to, go and create a spreadsheet separately so I can track that part.
Gotcha.
You know what? You know where I feel this would fit great is, and it's something I've been wanting them to bring over to the client success module, the data quality, right? And you've already got a module that kind of points out what data is missing from certain clients. So you could build on that further and allow us to even customize and say, hey, I want to rate this client a lower data quality score if they don't have these assessments done on a regular basis or whatever, right? Or even when you're displaying the data quality points and telling us this is what we see there, when's the last data was updated, maybe? Right? How accurate is that data? Is that dirty data that's like a year old that might need some investigation, or is it accurate and up to date? Right?
Okay.
So that whole data quality and what have we taken our eye off the ball with, right? That we might want to spend more time on.
And that sounds great. It makes a perfect sense to me. Who would be the consumer of that? Would it be like account managers plus like the kind of owner, MSP owner looking down at them saying, hey, this one account manager has like these things out of date?
Well, I guess
I think there's maybe a few angles of use cases there, Adam, because one scenario could be a service desk manager or a VCAO manager just looking at which clients have lower scores or trying to address low scores. And so the data quality report by itself fully automated might give a false sense of security if there are, other components like Brian was saying that maybe it should have been scored lower, but there was no ability to manually input that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Updates on agenda that you guys are working on?
To updates on which, sorry?
Agendas, the agenda of the report builder.
Andrew, do you have any updates on that one?
No updates other than it's on our roadmap.
So yeah, no time frames commits on that one. We're doing this every month, so we'll be back in a month. So we'll take a note of that one and try to bring you some updates.
Okay, thank you.
Well, we're at the top of the hour, folks. I find these incredibly useful just because there are nuances, obviously, to everybody's workflows that are not immediately obvious during just higher level conversations. So I love hearing about these specific details. If you find this type of session useful, I'd love you guys to throw in a thumbs up on the Zoom there, because we'd love to continue doing these, and I think they're a good feedback loop system. So appreciate everybody's participation. We'll try to do these, I think, on a monthly cadence. It seems to be a good way to make sure that we're keeping a finger on the pulse of some of the major desires or issues that people are tracking. So yeah, thanks for everybody's participation. Thank you, Adam and Andrew, for jumping in today, and to everybody that had brought ideas. Thanks, Olina. By the way, say hi to Matthew. I hope he's doing well. Otherwise, yeah, thanks everybody. We'll post this. You'll see an email from me on Monday with the recap and link. And I won't be around next Friday or the Friday after that, as I'll be on vacation. But we'll have something in the email to update you on what's happening on those Fridays while I'm away. Awesome. Thanks again.
Thanks everyone.
So much, everyone. Cheers.
Peace.